Hey, good morning. Nice to see everyone today. Well, most of you at least. So, it's good. That's my favorite joke. It just never gets old. You're like, yeah, it does, Ryan. No, it definitely gets old. You need somebody with some honesty in your life to tell you that. So it's good to see everyone, though. If you're a guest today, you're like, what the heck was that video with the English guy who thinks he's better than us? And so Simon is one of our guitar players, and he's like every week he plays guitar. He loves it, and oftentimes he'll greet everyone, and he'll greet his mom and dad who are in the UK. And so he's back visiting, so we thought we'd have some fun. So if you're a guest, little inside joke. Sorry about that. But absolutely. But it is good to see you today. If you are tuning in online or if you're in the room for the first time, my name is Ryan. I'm the lead pastor here at Crossroads, which means I get to serve our staff and our volunteers as we walk this journey of really reimagining our tradition in healthy terms, like peacemaking. And so we're grateful you're here. If you're a guest this morning and you have some questions, things you'd like to explore about Crossroads, I would encourage you to leverage inside of the program is my cell phone number. Just shoot me a text message and I will be more than happy to let you buy me a drink, coffee, whatever you want to do. You can buy me dinner. It's fine. No problem at all. But no, we can get together, have some coffee, chat. I'd love to hear your story, share a little bit of mine as well. Raise your hand up nice and high if you have actually done that and I've actually responded, so you can look around the room and see that I'm not lying. I'm actually trying to be honest for once in my life, okay? So there's that, all right? Here's the thing, quick review, okay? Little quick review for you. We've been in a series called The Revelation. Now, if you're a guest today and you're coming from another faith community that maybe looks a little bit like ours, I just want to give you a warning. Maybe just a breath is what you're going to need, okay? Because I'm going to talk about this crazy book probably a little differently than maybe you've ever heard before. This little letter called The Revelation. And we just want everybody to take a breath and calm down, okay? And relax a little bit, okay? But a quick review, and these are kind of complex statements, but it's what we covered in the first 2 weeks, and you're welcome to download the app and listen or watch, or you can go online, listen and watch to kind of get caught up. But in the first week, we really set the stage for how we engage with this literature. And we said that without a divergent interpretation that's faithful to the peacemaking path of Jesus, we will fall into the bottomless pit of speculative fundamentalism. And I love those words because they make me sound smart. All right? But listen, what we're saying is, over the last 50 years, which kind of stemmed from the past 200 years, there is a way of reading the Revelation that turned it into a speculative ideology. Like, we're going to look at this book and figure out how the end of the world is going to happen. And God became this very enigmatic reality that you had to figure out, or else bad things were going to happen. And we've said that has been problematic. And we said we need a divergent interpretation, one that doesn't fit into necessarily one category, but kind of takes the best of everything and that is faithful to Jesus, okay? Because as I say here often, I am not into helping people follow the Bible. I think that could be a terrible idea. There's a lot of pain that has come from people trying to follow the Bible. We want to follow the Jesus we see revealed in the Bible, right? And we recognize Jesus as our icon of God, Jesus as the incarnation, and that's the way in which we interact with that. So we want that to be the case, all right? Now, last week then we looked at this crazy guy named John, who is the self-proclaimed author of the Revelation, and we said we have to kind of get to know people before we judge them, and we have to understand their world and his experiences. And we said last week that John, who was a victim of imperial violence, right? He was a victim of imperial violence. The Empire of Rome had cast him aside. He was very outspoken, very vocal, which is why they would have put him out on an island, exiled him by himself. And this guy believed very deeply in the purity of his movement. He was actually probably believed differently than other people in the Christian movement. Like, he had different views than Paul on things like eating meat sacrificed to idols. For those of you that geek out on churchy things, you're like, what? We don't eat, why does it matter? But so we have this like diversity of thoughts, and John was a purist, definitely. And he thought that Jesus, along with Paul, who thought this as well, that Jesus would return very soon in their lifetime. This was going to happen. And John thought that when Jesus returned, like, he was going to violently destroy the Roman Empire. And the reason why John thought that was because he had experienced violence, and that was his norm. He was part of the normative of civilization. I don't know if you know this or not, but civilization still seems to think that violence is the answer. And I would argue that it's not. And so he thought this, and then he said, in the violence, God was going to establish an eternal kingdom of justice and peace in its place. All right, so that was John's thought. So that's where we are. Oh, did you bring your seatbelts today? Now, if you're a guest this morning, I just want you to know we're going to be here a hot minute, okay? So we usually end around 11:10 if you're a guest, all right? So that's what we're shooting for today. And we got 2 songs, communion, the donations, all that stuff. But I'm telling you, I don't know if we're going to get to anything but me talking today, all right? So just forgive me, because we got a lot to cover to help us engage with this literature in a life-giving way, in a healthy way. Okay, so how many of you love stories? Raise your hand up nice and high. You love a good story. I love stories. This past year, we did a big series called, I don't remember what we called it, but it was like TED Talks. And we kind of looked at themes from Ted Lasso, this beautiful story, if you've ever watched the show Ted Lasso. And we had a lot of fun with that. And we pulled out themes from our tradition, this way of following Jesus and how they intersected. And we resonate with great stories like that, right? One of my favorite things to do, Wendy and I, is to go see shows, to see musicals. Anybody like to go see shows, musicals? Like, we used to live about 4.5 hours from New York City, and we'd go a couple times a year, see shows on Broadway. Love it. And we would go see like The Lion King and all these things. So I brought with me today, because when I go, I'm kind of like a collector of things, right? I love to get like the souvenir like programs. Do you all ever do? Do you get suckered into them? Anybody else get suckered into these? I do, because they like give you kind of this like memory, and they're beautiful, and they're filled with all the scenery and the music and the costumes, and I love it so very much. And so like here in Denver, we went to Hadestown. Anybody seen Hadestown down in Denver? Woo. We saw Aladdin in New York City. Lots of fun. The genie. We took our kid. This was one of our last trips that we did when we were moving out here. So we took our kiddos and we said, let's go to New York City one last time, and we saw Aladdin. See? The tear. You all. Les Mis, one of my favorite musicals. I saw Les Mis in Denver too this year, and just like, I'm like, this is the gospel. Why don't we get it? I love it. Riverdance was one of the first things I ever saw. Didn't know it was all dancing. Didn't know that, so bit of a surprise there, but you know, it's okay. I was sitting there with it like, why did I just spend $25 on this? I was a poor. Spider-Man on Broadway didn't last very long. This was awful. It was so bad. Oh my gosh, it was terrible. So bad. Poor Bono. I think U2 did the music for this. It was funny, but we had a good time. Phantom of the Opera was one of my favorites, right? You gotta love the Phantom. The Lion King. Hamilton. How many of y'all seen Hamilton? Yeah, Disney Plus. Thank you for bringing it to the masses. We love it. We saw Hamilton down in Denver this year. Now, Hamilton was weird because we'd watched it so much on Disney. Like, we went and there were all these like people, and we were like, you're not George Washington. You sit on a throne of lies, to quote Elf, right? Speaking of Elf, we saw Elf on Broadway. That was fun. Or in Boston, that was good. Let's see, what else do we have here? Ooh, the Beatles' Love at Cirque du Soleil. We saw that in not that I've ever been to Las Vegas or gambled or anything, though. No, I wouldn't do that. Beetlejuice. Anybody see Beetlejuice? People are like, what? That's at Broadway? It is hilarious. Completely inappropriate, though. So, but as you'd expect. Tina knows how to throw a party. That was one of the best endings I've ever had. Like, it was great. MJ, good stuff, right? So, but I love it, right? I love it because like they tell these stories and they have these characters. This was Mean Girls. I didn't know quite what to expect there, but it was fun, right? I love it because like you go and you get immersed for a few hours in a story, right? And great stories capture us. Now, whatever that medium is, right? Maybe you would rather go to a movie, or maybe you'd rather read a book, right? But whatever that medium is, we love great stories that are filled with great characters, right? And why is that? Because great stories, they connect with us, they challenge us, and they move us. If you're a fill-in-the-blank person, there they are. Bold, underline, yellow. And I always have to give you a second, because if you're a fill-in-the-blank person, you start filling it in and you start ignoring me, and it hurts my feelings, okay? So I'm going to give you a second because there's 3 in there, right? Some of you have looked at the sheet of fill-ins today and you're like, holy cow, are we ever going home? All right? So buckle up, because we're going to get through this, I promise, all right? So a great story does the first thing, right? It connects with us, right? It not only connects with us like personally, but it connects us to one another, because a great story, right, unveils a shared experience. That's why shows like Ted Lasso are so powerful, because it's like we see ourselves, we see the experiences, the emotion, we resonate with them. They connect us to the characters as well, right? Really great stories, important stories. They challenge us. They challenge our norms. I can think of a handful of movies that I thought were like extraordinarily important that I would never want to watch again, but I'm glad that I watched because it challenged a way of seeing the world. And we need those things. We need that narrative. Stories are powerful. A really great story will unveil and reveal our biases. Anybody in here biased about anything? Yeah, raise your hand up. Don't lie in church. That's not good, you know? Don't be bringing your lightning bolts in here. No, I'm just kidding. Right? Like they reveal our biases, and they, in a sense, they open our eyes. They're revelatory, right? Great stories, they move us, right? Because they unveil our biases, because they reveal a truth that might be hidden from us, and they put it in living color, like we become better. Like we can become better from that experience. We can encounter the divine in these stories that's shaping us and challenging. We can all of a sudden find a better sense of purpose or identity. And one of the most amazing Broadway musicals that does this is Wicked. How many of you have seen Wicked? Give a nice, yeah. The movie's coming out for those of you the uncultured. You can go get some popcorn. I'm just kidding. But Wicked, we saw Wicked in Providence, Rhode Island years and years and years ago, and then we just went down for the 20th anniversary down in, where do I live now? Denver, down in, I always get confused. I'm like, what city is this? Okay, it's good weather, it's Denver, okay. Wicked is powerful. It's a great example of a story that has these really amazing characters that we connect with, that challenge us, and then can move us to become better people. Now, if you're not familiar with this story, Wicked, right? Wicked is a musical, and it kind of is based on, it's a prequel, and it also parallels the story of The Wizard of Oz. And it's based on a novel called Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West. Now, there's a whole book series that Kia told me. I have to tell you that it really bothers her that I'm not bringing up the books because the books are way better. People always tell you that. Oh, the book's so much better. Oh my gosh, who's got time for that nonsense of reading and reading and reading? Give me a 2.5-hour cliff note. No, I'm just kidding. I love it. But it's this beautiful story, right? And it tells the story behind the witches of Oz. Now, some of you are kind of freaking out. He's using the word witches. They're not real. It's fantasy, okay? Now, and it's their relationship between these two women, Elphaba, who becomes the Wicked Witch of the West, and Glinda, who becomes the Good Witch. Now, the premise is that it explores these backstories and their relationship, right? And the whole idea is it gives you this perspective of these two well-known characters and this really well-known story, but it gives you a totally different perspective. And it dives into these big themes of friendship and acceptance, the very nature of good and evil, and the consequences of our choices. Like, these are all big themes in there. And it really does challenge us. It will challenge you to reconsider the simple dichotomy of good versus evil, like the black and white way in which many of us are raised to think about it, right? And the whole musical suggests that we are far more complex than we appear. Far more complex. And so the story begins with the birth of Elphaba, and she's born green. And that causes her to spend her life being ostracized, misunderstood, made fun of from a very early age. And despite her difficult upbringing, Elphaba is this intelligent, passionate, and compassionate person who cares for her sister, who has a disability. And it's just, she's this beautiful person. And she's sent to Shiz University. And it's there that she gets parted up into be a roommate with Galinda, who becomes Glinda, right? And she is the exact opposite. She's superficial, she's popular, right? That's who she is. But they get paired up, and despite their differences, these two women become friends. And as the story progresses, Elpha's ideals begin to clash with what she sees around her. So her big desire is to go see the wizard. The wizard will make her ungreen. It's going to be amazing. And she gets there, and the wizard is corrupt. By the way, spoiler alerts at church today. Sorry about that. So the wizard is corrupt. And she realizes it, and she's like, I don't want it anymore. Like, what you are is the exact opposite of who I am. And so she actually rejects this path that everybody says is good. And she says, I don't want it anymore. Whatever the cost, whatever it means, I'm out, right? And there's this beautiful song at the end that if you don't cry during that song, you're just not human. There's something wrong with you, right? So it's powerful. And so she says, I'm going to do what's right. And her doing what's right leads her to be labeled wicked. While Glinda sticks with the wizard because she thinks this is my only ticket. And she's always been kind of programmed. And this is what good looks like. And so she compromises and conforms. And it's this beautiful, amazing story that asks the big question of morality. What is good? What is evil? Is it a matter of perspective? Do we put these words on people? Elphaba's supposedly wicked, but it's her resistance to tyranny, right? It's her story that's complex and tragic, and it's her transformation that becomes, makes her become the wicked witch. And so these powerful themes get explored about what does it mean to be a friend? What does it mean to truly accept someone? Our perception versus reality. This musical challenges the audience to question everything that you kind of have about these characters that you were given. It asks big questions around this idea of power and corruption, around identity and our own self-acceptance with who we are and how we have been made and created. And really this big overall idea is that there's this powerful message about the complexity of human nature and the importance of looking beyond appearances to understand the true essence of people and their actions. That's the power of a good story. The wizard, the wicked musical isn't about how to become a green witch. It's deep. It's powerful. It leverages a medium. Now, what's amazing about musicals and things like this is it's really important that you kind of know the characters before you dive in, right? And here's what happens. When we know the characters and we know a little bit about the plot, before the curtain goes up, our confusion goes down. So I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and they told me that they went to see Hamilton. And they were deeply confused the first half because they had no idea what it was about. They started singing, and it's are they singing the whole time? And it took him, he said to me, second half things, I started to get it. I started to figure things out and loved it. But that whole kind of first half, there was a little bit of confusion there. What is happening? And in the confusion, you kind of miss what's going on. Now, this has happened to me too. And I've learned, if I don't know much about the play or the musical, I need to read the playbill, right? And then I found that I always enjoy the show more. I always enjoy the show better when I can read the plot, understand the characters before I get there, right? But if I don't do that and the thing starts, I just kind of spend the whole time trying to catch up. I can't be immersed in the moment because I'm who's doing what? Who's the where? What is going on here, right? And here's the thing, the revelation of John is just like that. It's this beautiful piece of literature that offers us a big story that we can connect with, that we can be challenged by, that we can be moved and shaped and transformed by without saying, oh, I'm looking for all these specific, literal things. But you got to kind of know the characters and the big plot before you really jump in. So that's what we're going to do today. How's that for an intro? Some of you are finally. Are you going to read the Bible at some point in time? It's coming, I promise, okay? But that's to set the stage that the Revelation's cast of characters are important, they're complex, and you got to kind of get this big picture if you're going to let it be a transformative performance. And that's the way you want to think about this literature. Okay, so the Revelation's cast of characters are divided up into two teams, Team Lamb and Team Dragon, okay? Team Lamb and Team Dragon. Any Twilight fans in the house? How many of you were Team Edward? Raise your hand nice and high. Team Jacob? Boo. Okay. I don't have any idea. I don't know. I don't watch. Those movies make me feel inadequate as a husband, so I don't watch them. This is unrealistic expectation on me as a human being. I'm not a vampire or a werewolf. I can't love like that. Okay, so total side note from my counselor. I shouldn't have brought that up with you all. Okay, so Team Dragon, Team Lamb. All right, now let's talk about these teams, okay? Now, who's on Team Lamb? Team Lamb has a whole bunch of people on it. So on Team Lamb is God, the Lamb, the seven spirits, this woman, the seven churches. There's allegiant witnesses. There's 4 living things, 24 elders, and angels. And these are all designed for what's called the New Jerusalem. That's the big thing. Now, but here's the thing. That's kind of like the chorus, okay? And let's face it, like, chorus. I mean, who really cares about the whole thing? What we want to know are like the main characters. Who's the last person to come out at the show, at the curtain call, that everybody cheers really loud for? Right? So here's the thing. The major players on Team Lamb are God, right? God, that's the first one. And for John, okay, whether you agree or disagree with John, just so you know, for John, that means the God of Israel, also known as the Father, the sovereign God over everything. For John, this God orchestrates all the events of history towards the New Jerusalem. John believes that God's going to defeat the dragon, banish death, establish a New Jerusalem. To God belongs all the worship, all the praise, all the honor, all the glory that is not to be shared with anyone, especially Babylon, right? And this God brings salvation through the Lamb. So that brings us to the second character that's really important in Team Lamb, and that is the Lamb itself. The Lamb is the center of the throne room, okay? Center of all the action in Revelation. Now, the Lamb is, according to John, the Lord Jesus Christ. Important words, Lord, meaning not Caesar. Jesus, meaning this one who lived on earth. And Christ, meaning chosen to embody the fullness of God for us to see. This is what God is like. And this Lamb has many names and attributes that are kind of spoken about in Revelation. Jesus, Messiah, faithful one, firstborn from the dead, ruler of the kings of the earth. The Lamb loves, liberates, is the Alpha and Omega, who was and is to come. Is like a son of man, first and the last, the living one, holds the key to death and Hades town. That's what this musical's about. It's not. Don't go to it thinking that's what it is. He holds the keys to death and the grave is what it says. And so these images, lion, lamb, logos, light, these are all words that get used, and they all represent this one that is Lord over all lords and king over all kings. It's very political, remember that, okay? He's the savior and redeemer through the sacrifice, through the death of the lamb. That's the lamb, okay? So we got God and the lamb. And then there's the third is these 7 spirits that John refers to. And this is a little different. The 7 spirits, and there's kind of hot debate about this, but the 7 spirits seems like it might be John's language of talking about what others in the New Testament, that wrote parts of the New Testament, call the Holy Spirit. And if you're not familiar with that phrase and that kind of freaks you out, just think of it as their way of talking about the activity of God in our world right now, okay? So the Holy Spirit, this way in which you interact with the divine who's present in all things, right? So the 7 spirits, and the number 7 is a representation of perfection or wholeness or completion. And like the 7 spirits, they like correspond to the big mission of the Spirit. There's 7 churches that get mentioned. There's a spirit for each church, right? So they're part of like Team Lamb. Now these are the 3 major players for Team Lamb. Everybody go, yay, Team Lamb, woo! That's what you're supposed to do, right? And they form like this holy trinity. Now the word trinity is not in the Bible. We get that from the Matrix. If you've ever seen it, that's where we get that word, and it fits. And so the word trinity is just a man-made, human-made concept to help us understand the mystery of the divine. So don't freak out. Nobody can explain it. They think they can, but they can't. That's why people are still talking about it 2,000 years after the first person, a guy named Tertullian, thought of it, okay? So everybody calm down, all right? Don't worry about it. But they form this like holy trinity. So if you're more into like sports, think of them as the starting lineup. They're the quarterback, the running back, and the wide receiver. And if you're a lineman and that's what you did, I apologize. You're just not nearly as fun to watch on the field as those 3 positions. Tight end, okay, maybe, right? But that's that. Okay, so that's that. Now, their home field is the New Jerusalem. That's their playing ground. That's their stomping ground, okay? That's Team Lamb. Now, who's Team Dragon? Okay, and this is where we want to focus in on for the rest of the day. So Team Dragon. Everybody like, boo, hiss, right? Okay, so Team Dragon is the dragon, the beasts, which And first of all, there's this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book called Revelation for the Rest of Us, and they give this great playbill of the characters. So check it out. It's really good. I borrow a lot of this from them. I'm just not smart enough to do this on my own. Come on, people. In the talk notes from the past couple weeks, I've given you like some bibliography, some things that you can go to, and you might want to check that book out. I don't agree with everything they say, by the way. So there's a lot in there that I'm not down with, but that's the case with everything you read, right? There's things you read don't. At any rate, so that's like a disclaimer. I do not hold the opinions of the authors. Okay, now they translate, and I love it. They translate these beasts, as wild things, and there's two of them, right? And then you've also have on Team Dragon are all the inhabitants of what's called Babylon. There's kings and there's merchants and there's sailors and anyone who chooses to have the mark of the wild thing. Some of you just had shivers go up your spine. You're like, he's talking about the mark of the beast. Oh my gosh, right? If you grew up around that, okay? So that's it. Now, John also names some others. He calls them the Nicolaitans. He talks about Balaam and Jezebel. Okay, so this is like Team Dragon. But again, that's like the chorus line. We're like, but who are the major players and what are they all about? Okay, major players. First is Babylon. You cannot understand Revelation if we don't get the character Babylon. Now, Babylon's mission, right, its dark, sinister mission, right, is to embody the way of the dragon, right? Babylon rides on the wild things. In other words, wherever the wild things go, the values of Babylon go with them, right? And Babylon serves as a timeless metaphor for John for empire and injustices and idolatry, okay? Now, the word idolatry has baggage, okay? And so I want to be really cautious with that. So if we could just kind of set that word aside, and we just have to enter John's world, okay? So John had a massive issue with idolatry, right? And what he would define as idolatry, but really as it relates to these other big ideas. So in John's day, Babylon was Rome. It's very clear in the Revelation. He talks about the city on 7 hills. That is a clear reference to Rome. So we just have to know Babylon for John was Rome. And Babylon falls. Babylon is called the great prostitute. Like John has an issue with sex. He's just like, they're whores and prostitutes. Okay, but that's just like, we just got to get that is like, okay. So there's Babylon, big deal. Then there's the dragon. Now the dragon has a mission, and that mission is to accuse, is to deceive, and to bring death. That's the mission. Now, then there's the wild thing one. Think thing one and thing two, okay? That'll help you remember. So wild thing one is a beast from the sea, the text says. Okay, so you got Babylon and the dragon, and then Babylon rides on these beasts. One is from the sea, and the mission of wild thing one, the beast from the sea, is to embody the will of the dragon, right? To live that out. And the beast represents chaos and power, deception, and opposition to the Lamb. Honestly, we might think of John thinking as this first wild beast as being a metaphor for the like armies of Rome, or the navy of Rome. It comes from the sea, right? So you might think of him as saying, oh, there's these two factions that carry Rome and carry their values, the military, right, on land, and then you have sea, right? So the beast one represents chaos and power and deception, all right? Now, then you have wild thing two. Now, wild thing two is the beast from the earth, potentially the Roman army is what he's thinking of. And this mission is to embody the will of wild thing one and the dragon, and they are the chief propagandists. They travel around on the land, right, bringing confusion. Now, here's what's crazy. Like John says that the wild thing too looks like the lamb, but acts like the dragon. Looks like the lamb, acts. So as Rome moves around through its empire, it comes promising things the lamb talks about. Peace on earth, Pax Romana, flourishing for all. But it doesn't bring that in the same way. It acts like the dragon, death and destruction and oppression, right? Wild thing two forces everyone to worship wild thing one. And you don't necessarily have to think of that as like bowing down and worshiping, but bringing on the values and living it out. Does these miracles, right? Like they're fraudulent, but deceives the world. Forces human beings to accept the mark of the wild thing, which is what number? Everybody say it out loud. Some of you are so scared you won't even say it out loud. You will not say it. 666 is the number, people. 666, okay? Like, just find freedom. Say it out loud with me. 666. Beetlejuice, she says. Let's close in prayer and receive an offering. I mean, I don't know how to end any better than that, right? I've never had Beetlejuice yelled at me as like an amen, so I'll take it. Y'all are a fun church. I wish more people knew about you. Okay, so here's the thing. 666, just to comment, 666 clearly represents the Roman Emperor Nero. We know that now. For when you study numbers and letters and things like that. Here's the deal. This week, okay, I'm going to do a video all about this number and Nero's connection to all of this, and I'm going to post it in our Facebook community group. If you're on Facebook, you can do it there. If you're smart enough to not be on Facebook, we'll try and get it on the YouTube channel or something. But every week I've been doing like one video to just kind of like supersize this and unpack some other ideas, and so we'll put that out there and send it to you, okay? So here's the thing. We'll do that. So just set that aside. Like, that's what it's saying. Like, to take on the mark is to take on the values of. Now, these three major players are Team Dragon. What do? Boo, right? Okay, good. You're getting it. Team Dragon, right? Now, Team Dragon forms, like John sets this up brilliantly. They form an unholy trinity, right? The beasts and the dragon, right, and Rome that rides on them, or Babylon, right, they form kind of an unholy trinity. And what's their home field is Babylon, right? That's where they were made. That's where they flourished. Now, according to John, these two teams are engaged in a cosmic battle with one another. It's fantasy world, right? They're engaging in this big battle. One commentator scholar calls it a battle of sovereignties. Like, who is actually in control? And we can't read Revelation well, we can't engage with it until we understand that's John's multi-layered cosmic universe. And we have to know the characters that are involved, and we have to know the characters that are visible and invisible. Now, this thing that sets the whole stage for this, what John wants you to get, and we get this early on, like in the Revelation, you have kind of an introductory chapter, then you got a couple of chapters that deal with the seven churches and the seven spirits, and then you have the throne room. And the throne room scene sets the tone and establishes where real power rests. And John gives it to us right at the beginning. So this throne room scene, Revelation chapter 4, verse 3 through 11, you're like 20 minutes in and he finally reads the Bible. Okay, here we go. It says this, and the one seated there on the throne looks like jasper and cornelian, and around the throne is a rainbow that looks like an emerald. And around the throne are 24 thrones, and seated on the thrones are 24 elders, dressed in white robes with golden crowns on their heads. This represents the beauty of the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 apostles, probably what John is kind of drawing imagery to. That's where those numbers come from. And coming from the throne are flashes of lightning and rumblings and peals of thunder. And in front, look, we have to call back up. It's that long today, I know. I told them though, I was like, there's a lot of words today. We might want to, okay. We're not even halfway through, so they might switch again. Don't even. Okay, so there's flashes of lightning. In front of the throne burns 7 flaming torches, which are the 7 spirits of God. And in front of the throne, there's something like a sea of glass, like crystal. And then it says later on, the 4 living creatures, each of them with 6 wings, are full of eyes all around. And inside, it's kind of creepy if you ask me, but whatever. And day and night, without ceasing, they sing, holy, 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 the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. And whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to the one who is seated on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before the one who is seated on the throne, and they worship the one who lives forever and ever, and they cast their thrones before the crown, and they cast their crowns before the throne, and they sing, you are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they existed and were created. Now, if you're one of the 24 elders, you gotta get frustrated when they start singing, because now it's like, oh, we gotta do this again. Okay, here we go. And I say it, and then we do it, and we sit back down. And it's for all of eternity. This is gonna get old. This is gonna get old. No. There's a scholar named David Mathewson, and he tells us that John's original listeners, because this would have been read. You have to remember, this would have been read to a community as a performance almost, right? They would have been listening to it. Most of them wouldn't have been able to read. So they would have been listening to this, and they would have immediately understood that the throne room was a parody of the Roman court. Because they had heard all the stories about the Roman court and the emperor and the throne room. And they would have read it as a complete parody because it countered the imperial claims. And today we miss this for all kinds of reasons. We talked a little bit about that in the earlier weeks. But we miss it because of our distance from that culture and a time where the throne room represented this seat of power and control and lightning and where it all stemmed from. And so we miss that. And we get really comfortable with our political positions in the West. But we don't get that for that early churches those 7 churches that this was being read in, they would have got it completely because they were completely uncomfortable with the politics that they were in. It would have made sense. So the point isn't that there's a literal throne room. Okay, please do me this favor. I'm going to take my hat off. I'm so serious about this one. When you get into conversations with your friends this election cycle, okay? Oh, he's going to do it. He's going to do it. And somebody says this to you when you get into a conversation about why you think this person or these policies are better or worse. And they well-meaningly say this, well, no matter what happens, God's still on the throne. Do me a favor and say, what? Huh? I mean, God was still on the throne with the Third Reich, but I'm pretty confident that everybody cared who was in charge down here. Can I get a Beetlejuice? I mean, it is one of those statements that we don't realize that just absolves us of responsibility to care for the poor and the oppressed. Well, God's still on the throne. I'm like, well, I think it mattered who was president as we were coming out of like massive injustices in the civil rights movement. I think it mattered deeply. So that's aside, that's free. That's not even a talk note. Okay, so here we go. Now, so it's important for us to see that this throne room vision fundamentally determines the message of Revelation. And the message is this. I said, God is on the throne, yes, but there's more to it. Caesar is not. Okay, that's the message of Revelation. Like John's saying, you think that Caesar is powerful. You think that, but no, the real power is with God. Babylon's going to fall, and someday justice will be established and a new Jerusalem. Now, all of this unfolds naturally for us when the book is read to an audience dwelling under the oppressive power of Rome, aka Babylon, right? And the book gives us the forces that Team Lamb are up against. What is the very nature of Babylon, and what are the marks of the wild things? So we're going to go through these very, very quickly. We're going to give you the 7 marks of the beast that are revealed in Revelation. Now, you have to go and read it for yourself, but I'm pulling these out as principles, okay? So don't think of mark of the beast as a tattoo or a chip. I mean, it's just silly. Don't do that, okay? It's so much bigger. And can I share a little secret with you? A little secret? You and I, we have the mark of the beast on us. Let's close in prayer. Because you're like, no, I don't. I did not tattoo 666. I mean, I got tattoos, Ryan, some that I regret, but 666 ain't one of them. Okay? Just to stick with me and you'll see it, okay? We all bear the marks of the beast. No matter how hard we're trying to be on Team Lamb, it's just called being human, okay? It's just called growing up in a system that is wired a certain way, okay? No matter what. So Revelation 17, 1 through 10 is John's theme verse for understanding Team Dragon. It says that one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, come and I will show you the judgment of the great whore who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of earth have engaged in sexual immorality, and the wine of whose prostitution the inhabitants of the earth have become drunk. That's a good opening line for a musical, right? Like you're like, oh, this sounds exciting, right? But here's the thing, that's what he's saying, and he's using imagery from some of our texts from the Hebrew scriptures. But what he's basically saying is the very heart of the dragon and the wild things is domination through oppression and opulence. The very heart of the work of the dragon and the wild things is to dominate the world And the way in which they do that is oppressive in its strategy and through let's show the opulence, let's show how amazing we are, how much power and money and wealth we have. We are the wealthiest, most powerful empire in the world. And if we can show our might, we can keep peace. And if we can show that we hold the wealth and the wealthiest live amongst our gates, then everybody will come and do business with us and will rely on us. And so Revelation chapter 17 through 18 reveals these 7 signs of Babylon. And they manifold and they manifest the idolatries and the injustices that John is talking about, right? And so if you want to reduce them to their core, right, they express this idea of a corrupted and corrupting civil religion, a religion that's accepted by the population, and a spiritualization of politics, okay? So here's the thing, all right. What does that look like? Here's what they are. So we're going to go quick. Team Dragon opposes the one true God. For John, that's a big deal. So for John says, if you're not with me, you're against me. And Jesus actually said it a little differently. He actually said, if you're not against me, this is interesting. But for John, he's like a purist. And so he's like, hey, there's this anti-my religion movement, and that is the way of the dragon. Team Dragon gets richer while everybody gets poorer. So the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. We see that over and over again as we talk about the commerce of Rome and what happens in Babylon. Team Dragon finds victory through murder and violence. These are the marks of the beast, okay? Team Dragon keeps up appearances regardless of the cost. So it's very image driven. Look at how opulent we are. Look at all the adornments that we have. Forget about the cost to its citizens. Forget about the cost to people and the oppression. Team Dragon needs an emperor and not a king. It's very interesting that Rome chose to use the word imperator, which means military leader, as opposed to rex for king. It's August. You know where we get August from? Like Augustus, the first emperor, right? That they chose that way for a reason. They were putting their trust in military strength. Military might was the way of peace. The Pax Romana was upheld through fear, through weapons, and through war. Team Dragon worships at the altar of prophets. Not prophets, P-R-O-P-H-E-T, but P-R-O-F-I-T-S. Rome or Babylon aggregated, accumulated, exploited, taxed, and traded with their foot on the necks of the common person. And this was the daily experience throughout the empire. We have mosaics in Pompeii that show us that on certain houses you can read on the floor, it says literally, hello, prophet. Or one says, prophet is happiness. We also see that Team Dragon turns arrogance into a virtue. And this probably sums up the whole thing. Arrogance becomes a virtue. The Emperor Augustus, who our month is named after, wrote up all of his accomplishments. And when he died, someone inscribed them in the front of his mausoleum. And we don't have the original, but we have copies of this. And it's called the Acts of the Divine Augustus. And it just put on record the arrogance of the empire. And this stands in sharp contrast to the humiliation of the cross of Christ, the one who we would say is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, whose way is the way of peace. And so here's what we don't want to miss, right? Dissident peacemakers, that's what we're talking about being. Dissident peacemakers, they discern the timeless tactics of Team Dragon and track with Team Lamb in their everyday normal lives. So the beauty of this story, of this performance that we have, is that it opens our eyes. It reveals, it is a revelation of what destroys the world. And it's all these values, these marks of Team Dragon, right? The timeless taxes of Team Dragon are given to us, and then we do our best to follow Team Lamb. Now, in your everyday normal life, John gives us, basically by doing this, he's saying you have some choices to make very, very quickly. John casts judgment on the dragon and the wild things in Babylon, and he offers a revelation, and he's saying, watch out, be alert. There's a path to destruction that looks like life, but it's championed by those who seek power and control and wealth, and that's not real power lies. And so the revelation offers you and I a choice, Team Lamb or Team Dragon. So 7 choices that counter the values of Team Dragon, things that we can choose in our everyday normal lives that diminish those marks in us. First of all, choose love over the anti-love systems of this world. So I hold to this beautiful revelation that we have that God is love. So when John says in his world, in his understanding, that Babylon is anti-God, the Team Dragon is anti-God, then I say like Team Dragon is anti-love. And there are systems in our world that we live in that are against radical, inclusive love. Another thing we can do in our everyday normal lives to track with Team Dragon is to choose simplicity over opulence. Notice the way I said you choose simplicity over opulence. That does not mean that you don't have wealth. I am not opposed to wealth. God is not opposed to wealth, nor do I believe in God wants everybody. No, choose simplicity over opulence. Opulence shows this disdain for the normal way of life that's followed by most of the population. It's a showcase of indulgence and this way of just showing consumerism, putting it on display, and it ultimately says, I have a superior way about me. So we choose simplicity over opulence. Choose critical thinking over mindless acceptance. If there's one message in Revelation that John wants to get to his churches, is start thinking critically about the world in which you live. Offer a critical examination of the things that you think are harmless, that are acceptable, that are actually leading to these unacceptable pains. So choose critical thinking over mindless acceptance. Babylon offered death for those who would dissent, and the same is true today. And then we choose humble authenticity over the allure of image and persona. The dragon wants to look good, wants to portray itself as having it all put together, and the kings of this world, look at how much influence they have. But there's no humility there. Follow leaders that are humble. Follow leaders that are willing to engage with a sense of mystery and openness. Know-it-alls, that's Team Dragon, 100%. So figured out. I want to encourage you to choose to mourn and not celebrate military action. That is the way of Team Lamb. To cheer on death, listen to me carefully, to cheer on death and to celebrate military action as if God has imposed that on us is Team Dragon thinking. To cheer on death of anyone is anti-Christ. So perhaps we ought to think about military action as at times, I get it, some people think it's necessary. Maybe it is a necessary evil. I don't know. I get the complexity of it. But maybe we should think about military action as a necessary evil for rescue, for the ending of oppression. But it's never something to be celebrated. The only thing we should ever do is mourn. And it's never something to be attributed to a God that we claim to be love. So I can support and pray for troops. I can support those things. But I can also have a posture at what military action and war does to people, even when we can label it as just. Yesterday, we had the privilege to go and be at a ceremony that marked the opening of a new nonprofit that you all support through our Partners in Hope. And I have a little coin here I wanted to show you that they gave to you all. And I don't know what I did with it. It's here somewhere. Let's see, where is it? There it is. So they had 6 or 7 folks there, and they gave us this coin, and I've never served in any of the armed forces, but it's a challenge coin, and you can only give them and receive them through a handshake. I guess it was really a powerful moment, and they gave it to you all because this nonprofit is focused on, it's called Combat Recovery Foundation, and they're focused on suicide prevention for veterans. See, the fact that we have to have an organization that focuses solely on mental health and suicide prevention for those that have served our country tells us there's something about this that's intrinsically disordered, that it produces a lot of hurt and pain, even in serving and doing this beautiful thing. So those of you, I know many of you have served our country in the military, and I'm grateful for that. So hear what I'm saying though. This coin represents the reality that why we should mourn, because we lose soldiers who feel disconnected, who deal with the pain and the hurt of military action, the ones that believe it and are there. So this is huge, especially what Revelation teaches us. is that we should mourn those things. And the environments in the Christian community that will sit around and celebrate the dropping of bombs and the creation of orphans and widows, no matter who it is just, to me, mind-boggling when you think about Jesus. So we choose to mourn it and weep over it. And then I want to encourage us to choose economic justice over exploitation and consumerism. That just basically means we strive to create a world where everyone has access to resources and opportunities they need to live a dignified and fulfilling life. And then we choose servant leadership over narcissistic arrogance. And I'm going to leave it at that. Choose servant leadership in your own life. Choose servant leaders around you over narcissistic arrogance. Because narcissistic arrogance is the way of Team Dragon. And if we'll read Revelation like this, and we'll take it, and we'll stop worrying about three numbers, 666, and what's going to happen, and who's going to get the microchip, and all of that nonsense. But if we will actually read it as a revelation of what is destroying humanity, of what is harming us, that we all participate in it some measure. Like that's what John is saying to the 7 churches. This is a part of who you are. Come out of Rome, right? If we can just accept that we sometimes unknowingly live into the marks of the beast. We sometimes unknowingly do this, but it'll expose and open our eyes. And when we start to refuse the intoxicating tactics of Team Dragon, because power and wealth, it's all intoxicating, I get it, we will begin to live in the power of the Lamb. And that power truly heals the wounds of our world. And we get to participate in it. And that's what it's about. I believe that's what the image around the throne room is. It's not sitting and singing for all of eternity. It's the engagement and the honoring and giving our lives to all that is represented by Team Lamb. That's the worship of the throne. That's the beauty of every nation, tribe, and tongue coming together. So as we have communion today, what is it that God's inviting? Simple metaphor for God's love. It's a simple metaphor that everyone is welcome to the table. And the way to heal the world is not through violence, but it's through sacrifice. It's not through harboring grudges, but it's through forgiveness. It's through justice, not oppression. These were all the things that the historical Jesus and the Jesus of our faith reminds us of. And that we can, in that truth, live and move and have our very being and be nourished by the body and the blood of the living Christ to do this. So you are welcome to the table around us. It is white grape juice. I got to remind you this. And it's white grape juice because finances are tight, and that's what we got. All right? So if you want purple grape juice, write a check for $200,000-$300,000, and we'll get all the purple grape juice you want. Until then, it's white grape juice until we're out of it, okay? So don't freak out. But you're invited to that table. So this week, spend some time considering which team has the greater influence in your life. They both influence us, okay? Oh, I had some Team Dragon moments this week. I'm not going to lie to you. I walked right off the peacemaking path. I can think of one time for sure I did. And I knew it. I was in it. I was like, oh man, I am off the peacemaking path with this person. I got to get myself back on it. So it happens. But where is the influence? Open up your imaginations to this way in which John brings us and invites us to see the world as this beautiful cosmic reality. And we can see the divine all around us. The song we have for you during this first part of communion, it just speaks to like seeing God in some of the most beautiful spaces that are just right around us. And this week I want to encourage you to read the Revelation as political satire with a little bit better understanding of the cast of characters. So if you're able to and you would like to this morning, I want to invite you to stand as we have communion. We share this song. And then we've got one more song, a blessing, and we'll get you out of here. The body of Christ broken for you, the blood of Christ shed for you.